Josh Allen and the Bills on the road tonight, facing Aaron Rodgers and the newly vamped New York Jets. We're going to go deep into that game a little later, but first, Bryan Leonard joining us. Bryan, how, my friend, are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's football season. Baseball's still going on. Basketball and hockey to come next month and or later on in this month. So, yeah, really excited right now.
Sure. We're all excited on the first Monday after the opening Sunday of the NFL season to just bring some juice to the table. And, Bri, of course, we have a loaded show. We're going to talk some college football. We're going to talk some MLB for the day as well as the Monday night game. Let's start with some baseball. For Monday, MLB still on center stage for a lot of bettors. Looking at the WagerTalk live odds screen, I'm seeing the San Francisco Giants in the minus 140 range, minus 139, total of 7.5 against the Cleveland Guardians. What do you want to do with the Giants and the Guardians Monday Night Baseball?
Well, we're looking to fade the Guardians as we've done for a consistent amount since the trade deadline. Gavin Williams comes in with an impressive 3.34 ERA. But his advanced numbers show a 4.44 xFIP, 4.48 Sierra. You take a look at his BABIP. He's been very fortunate with 276. As I mentioned, Cleveland's fallen off since not making the trade deadline moves that the rest of the team thought they should make. And the team just hasn't recovered. They're looking to the future, the last 20 games or so, seeing who they want to keep next year. They've got a lot of guys that are fringe AAA, 4A players. They need to get a look at to see what they're going to do, especially shortstop next year. So I think this is a situation where they're going to get a lot of younger players the rest of the season for Cleveland. San Francisco starts Alex Cobb and his 3.74 ERA. His advanced stats back that up with a 3.44 xFIP, 3.77 Sierra. And unlike Williams, he's been unfortunate with the BABIP, 3.21 BABIP, and he's still got these great numbers. Cobb's just one of those guys that pitches well and pitches long into games, and he doesn't get a lot of credit. And I think that gives us a little bit of advantage in the betting markets. Giants are currently in postseason position while the Guardians are just playing out the string. I thought this, on a Monday card where a lot of lines were pretty tough, the ones that I thought were going to win, the lines were just too high. This is one favorite. I think that has some value here. I'm playing San Francisco.
There we go. Bryan Leonard with San Francisco. Bryan, Big Daddy writes, Prez, Teddy, and the Honky Tonk Man. I love it. And we've spoken about that before, I'm positive. You remember the Honky Tonk Man? I know Teddy's never heard of the guy because he's never heard of Triple H.
Is that where you go when you take your horses and your cows? Oh, that's something else. No, I'm not a wrestling fan, but I know who you're talking about. I know who it is. Old-time
there
wrestling.
We go. A little more worldly than Teddy. Bri, let's turn our attention to college football. Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. The undefeated 2-0 Air Force team facing 1-1 Utah State. -9, 9.5. The total here, 46.5. How do we bet this game?
Yeah, this is one game where I think the short sample size helps us here because coming into the season, I had Air Force favored by 20 in this game. The opener came out at 7. It's now 9.5. There's some 9s out there right now. So money's come in on Air Force, but that's 7. Congratulations to Brad Powers and some of those other guys that got a hold of that because that was a great number. And I think it's just an overreaction right now. Utah State's gotten so much love, but they had a 24-14 loss to then 25 Iowa. And Iowa wasn't very impressive in their next game going to Iowa State, which I think is a pretty bad team this year, only won that game by 7. Then they beat Idaho State 78-28. Idaho State hung in their previous game. But I just don't think this line is correct. Iowa really hasn't looked like a top 25 team their first 2 games. And as I pointed out, that Iowa State squad, Idaho State last week against Utah State, if you take a look at first downs, even though Idaho State lost by 50 points, they had more first downs, 28-13, but they had a -3 turnover margin in that game. So Utah State was a little bit fortunate, and I think a lot of people are giving them too much credit here. Air Force enters the week a perfect 2-0, as you mentioned, but they took on a weak schedule. Robert Morris and Sam Houston State. The defense was very good in those games. The offense wasn't that impressive, but they're looking for a double revenge in this matchup against the Aggies. They lost 34-27 last year in a game they thought they had in the pocket, and 49-45 the previous season in a similar situation. And considering the Falcons have only lost 3 or less games every season since 2018, you could be sure Troy Calhoun has this game circled. They may have been looking past those 2 games against non-conference competition. And you're throwing the fact that Air Force has lost their season opener 5 straight years. That's for their season opener in conference play. We have an extremely motivated favorite here on Friday. I like this Air Force team. Always like the coaching here. Double revenge and losing 5 straight season openers in conference play. Air Force has circled this game. I think Utah State is maybe drinking a little bit too much Kool-Aid going into this one.
So I want to talk about the double revenge angle right here because, last year Air Force is -11. They lose straight up. The year before, they're -9. They lose straight up. Is this a matchup that just doesn't work for Air Force potentially? Because, last year defensively, they gave up more yards to Utah State than any other opponent.
Yep.
That's my biggest concern, at least on a Monday morning. That's my biggest concern about the Air Force side here is that maybe this is just a matchup problem. Are you worried about that at all? And clearly you are because you keep nodding your head.
Yeah, definitely. That was the one thing that really bothered me about this game. But still, you'll see a lot of teams. Look at Indiana against Ohio State. There was a few years where Indiana really gave Ohio State everything, but then Ohio State finds a way to win. And then this year they struggle with Indiana again. So certain teams match up certainly with Air Force, and Utah State's been one of them. But I think when you open the line at 7, when a game, like I said, before the season started, I made it at 20. Maybe I'm higher on Air Force than some other people, but I think the line is perfectly set up where this is a game where Air Force, to me at least, they overlooked the first 2, and they're coming out with some vengeance in this one. And to get them less than 10 here, I think is a pretty good bargain.
Brian Leonard joining us on $9 Mondays, and you can find Brian exclusively at WagerTalk.com. Brian, what do you have to promote?
Well, I have nothing to promote, as I try to do every Monday. If I have a play up for $9 Monday, I try to give it to everybody who's nice enough to tune into your great show. And both of these are up on the site right now. So no need to buy my plays today. But we did have a winning week in college football, winning week in baseball, winning week in the NFL. So keep an eye on our plays for the rest of the week.
There we go. Brian Leonard, everyone. It's $9 Mondays at Wager Talk. Teddy, I'm really pumped for this segment. Every Monday we do bad beats, et cetera, et cetera. After that, I've got a lot to say. But before we get into any of that, we got a great show planned for you guys. 236 of you in the chat room watching live right now. Teddy, out of 236 people, I got to think 235 like the show.
Maybe 234.
234. Okay, guys, let's get to 234 likes in the next 5 minutes, please. And also subscribe to our channel. It's greatly appreciated. Lots of great shows ahead, especially 1 o'clock today, one of our most watched shows on the network, Teddy's Opening Line Report. So make sure to check that out. We got Marco D'Angelo coming up. He's going to talk about the Buffalo Bills and Jets game. Iowa State at Ohio. Get that out correctly. Drew Martin, he's got he's got a Seattle-Detroit bet, NFL, and then Atlanta and Philadelphia. I mucked that up, Teddy. So I'll be okay with 233 likes. Tell us. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the book. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. This was a weekend. Many of them are. Let's do a little bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. Starting in college, bad beats. Look, if you had Tulane plus 12.5, plus 13, they're up double digits at halftime. There's a 3-point game with less than 5 minutes to play. They decide not to go for the field goal attempt to tie. They went for it. They got stuffed. And then a Rebels touchdown. Go up 10. Field goal for Tulane. Onside kick. Ole Miss recovers. No big deal. Tulane burns timeouts. Rebels field goal, back up to 10, no biggie. You got plus 13 in your pocket until the fumble 6 on the last play of the game. Rebels win by 17. Tulane was ugly if you had them. Baylor, plus 4 to plus 7 at Utah. They led the whole way. They missed a field goal. They have an empty 60-plus yard drive. Fourth quarter, they have the ball and the lead. An interception leads to the field goal. Tie score with less than 2 minutes left. They have the ball, and now they're throwing somehow equals another interception, leads to an easy short field touchdown. Baylor loses by 7. That was no fun if you had the Bears plus the points. Texas, Alabama under. That game's 13-9 with less than a minute left in the third. The under's a done deal, except for that the over cash with more than 8 minutes left in the fourth. 5 touchdowns, quick strikes, turnovers deep in their opponent's territory, everything. If you had the under, that switched from under to over like that in Texas, Alabama. I had UCF at Boise. Here are the drives that didn't end up in touchdowns for UCF. 60 yards interception, 48 yards field goal, 62 yards stopped on down, 78 yards against the field goal, 75 yards easy touchdown, but the guy bobbles it and hits it right to the guy. Oh my God, it was an ugly interception. That made me crazy. 37 yards punt and then 58 yards for the game-winning field goal. At Boise, they had 11.3 yards per pass, 6.3 yards per rush. The offense clicked all day, and they ended up with 18 points. Boise missed a 2-point conversion, and lo and behold, the UCF wins by 2 in a game where they were laying 3. And last but not least, on Saturday, this was the most brutal one of all. Texas Tech leads Oregon by double digits in the second half. There's a 1-point game. The Red Raiders are driving to win until the pick 6 with 30 seconds left. Plus 7, no good. Plus 6, plus 5, plus 4.5. Did I mention that Texas Tech was Prez's 5%? That's a brutal loss, covering for 59.5 minutes, but not for the last 30 seconds. Couple of bad beats yesterday. The Saints were on the right side, but what are the Titans doing? I get it, but a field goal with less than 3 to play to cut a 4-point deficit to 1, that's a tough beat if you have New Orleans. And, of course, the Patriots eschew the field goal try. They go for it on 4th and 15, and they fail. And then the 2-point conversion is good, but it gets called back on a penalty. The field goal would have mattered. The 2-point conversion would have mattered. New England loses by 5 at plus 3.5. That was tough if you had the Patriots. When it comes to bad bets, they bet the crap out of Vanderbilt in college football. Plus 14 down to plus 9. They lose by 3 scores to Wake Forest. North Carolina, minus 13 to a minus high at App State. Minus 19 at App State. That wasn't a right side. Again, goes to overtime. Texas State, Texas San Antonio. That total got bet all the way up to 66. It landed 33. In the NFL, bad bets. The Commanders, huge published action. They get the win, but no cover versus the Cardinals. The Steelers, Pros and Joes likes them. They got crushed from the opening kick. And the Seahawks were a public play, embarrassed in the second half against the Rams. Those were all bad bets. When it comes for bad for the books, look, Colorado versus Nebraska, that's a Pro versus Joe game. If you were a book that caters to the Joes, you got hammered on Colorado, Nebraska. As bad as you get beat up in any college football game, the Buffs money. But then again, if you're a book that catered to wise guys, you cleaned up on that game. So depends on who your target audience is. Bad for books, Miami, Florida, plus 4.5 down to plus 2. They beat up A&M. The Utah-Baylor game we talked about, again, it was plus 4 to plus 7 for Baylor, and Baylor ends up losing by exactly 7. All that money cashes. SMU, Oklahoma lands right in the middle, minus 18 to minus 16.5, 20-11 final, wins by only 17. And bad for the books in the NFL, there were a fair few yesterday. Ravens were a public play that cashed against the Texans. The Jags were a public play that cashed against the Colts, even with an Indy defensive touchdown. The Eagles were a public play cash against the Pats. And, of course, that 2-point conversion, the most important point spread play in football. The Bucks, wise guy play, cash versus the Vikings. The Titans, wise guy play, cash versus the Saints. The Cowboy, wise guy play, cash versus the Giants. And Pros and Joes both had the Packers and the Raiders. Those were 2 particularly bad results for the books. There you have it, Prez. Bad beats, bad bets, bad for the books. I'm sorry for your Texas Tech loss. Unfortunately, games like that can and will happen sometimes. It happened to you on Saturday night.
Yeah, so Teddy, I want to talk about that and a few other things. We'll get into some business stuff, and then we're going to bring Marco in. We're going to look at the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets game. So my week was horrific, start to finish, Teddy. Saturday, I was on that Texas Tech game, and I was at a 50th birthday party, watching it on my phone. And then I called Brian Power because he was on the same game and he was texting me. And I called him for the last minute of that game. Should not have done that. It was a terrible phone call. Anyway, I think it was one of the worst beats I've seen in a long, long time. But then Sunday came around and I needed 45 yards from Sam Howell in the entire second half. Couldn't get it for me. I needed 6 more yards from Anthony Richardson. He was injured and missed the last 3 drives. I needed Minnesota to win the game on the money line. Couldn't get it done. Too many turnovers. Every ball bounced the wrong way for me this week, and it happens. And I do want to make the following statement. I put up a Twitter. I put up a tweet or an X, whatever the hell it's called, that said, sorry to all my clients about Texas Tech. It sucks. I'm gutted. And a gentleman responded by saying, what do you care? You took your client's money anyway. And that's what I want to talk about real quick. I care greatly, and I care for many reasons, but I'm going to highlight 2, both financial and emotional. From a financial perspective, I need you guys to understand that if we lose on a regular basis, whether it's me, Teddy, Marco, or any handicapper at WagerTalk, our business model is not sustainable. We cannot sustain a multi-million-dollar business by, we had a money grab on Saturday, who cares? It just doesn't work that way. For my own personal pocket, I need to win. These picks pay the bills. Now, some will say, well, why doesn't betting pay the bills? Because if you're a savvy, smart bettor or investor, you don't pull your winnings out to pay your bills. You keep your bankroll intact. What pays the bills is selling plays. It is not sustainable personally to lose, and it is not sustainable from a WagerTalk perspective to lose. So there is no money grab. It matters a lot financially if we lose. Secondly, from an emotional perspective, and Teddy can speak to this, I left the party. I was at a 50th birthday party, one of my best friends, and I left that party because I was destroyed over that Texas Tech bet. I can lose my money, guys. I'm a savvy bettor, and I win year after year after year betting. But clients buy one day here, one day there, and they count on you, and you lose. And I've been at it for 30 years. I'm an emotional wreck when I lose. So it destroyed me. I could have had action Saturday night. It was offered on the table. I turned it down. I couldn't eat Sunday morning. Teddy, you had to talk me off of a ledge at 11:30 on Saturday night. Am I wrong?
No. I mean, look, it's an emotional business, all right? What we try to do as handicappers, and especially professional handicappers, is try to slow and steady wins the race. For some of us, that's easier to do than others. Prez, beats are going to happen, all right? They're a piece of the process.
Of course.
Mentally, there are going to be games that are right size that end up losing. If you can't handle it mentally, this is the wrong hobby for you. When it happens,
this ain't a hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. For much of our audience, it is. All right.
Yes.
For us, this is what we do every day, all day. For much of our, not all our audience, but for much of our audience, it's something they enjoy doing in their spare time. And there's a difference between the two, a huge difference between the two. Both in terms of expected results
and to give you,
and in terms of mental. I'm sorry, Lawrence.
Sorry.
Go
ahead, bro.
No, you're something.
No,
you're
what I was going to
say
was, to give perspective on how bad that Texas Tech loss was. Had that game won, I would have been up units on the college football season. I would have been on a 6-2 run, and I would have won my 5% play. I also would have been on a 6-1 sides run in college football. Instead, that play loses. I'm now down units in college football to start. I'm on no run, and I lost by 5%. So if you guys don't think that I was an emotional basket case wreck over that loss, you're wrong. I can only guarantee one sec, Teddy. I can only guarantee one single thing. to my clients, and that is I will take those losses worse than you. Sorry, Teddy, and then I got to get into something. We'll bring Marco in.
Yeah, but the point is this: like the clients that we have, it's a relationship. All right, it really is. And when when your plays win, your clients love you. When your plays lose, your clients hate you. That's the nature of what we do.
Dude, it's not relevant. It's not relative. The love is a little. The hate is a lot. So that's
the nature of what we do.
Yes, of course.
But it's the nature of the game. You understand that getting into the business. That,
of course.
When you win, you pat yourself on the back. When you lose, everyone kicks you in the teeth. That's just how it works. I'm sorry you had a rough weekend. I'm sorry you had a bad beat.
Yeah, let's move on.
But that's all rearview mirror now, brother.
Yeah,
it's all rearview mirror.
Let's move on. Guys, I do want to point out we had some monsters yesterday. Jazzy Ray went 8-3. Steve Merrill swept the board with a 4-0 day. Jimmy Adams, we shouted him out all summer. Number one handicapper last year in NFL, went 3-0 to start the season. Ronald Kabang, 6-1. Brian Powers swept the board, 3-0. Trigger went 3-1. Las Vegas Chris won 8 units for his client, and on and on and on. Teddy won his 5% and went 2-1. But the weekend goes to Carmine Bianco. Carmine Bianco went 5-0 in the NFL and went 14-4 since Friday. Shout out to Carm. Way to go, my friend. Marco D'Angelo, anything to add so far to this show?
Nope. I thought Teddy had a heart out today.
Oh, you don't think we'll get Teddy out? That all depends on you, Marco. Okay, brother. Buffalo going into New York plus 2.5. What are you doing in this game?
Well, obviously, there's been a hype train all summer long with Aaron Rodgers in New York, and here it is. Happens to be this Monday night football game. That's no coincidence, and it's a big division matchup. However, guys, if you were jumping on the home underdogs for opening week, you got taken out to the cleaners. 1-4 on Sunday went the home underdogs this week, and this is the last chance. You had a division home underdog last night in prime time. We saw what happened to the Giants. So does that make me pump the brakes on the Jets? No, because the Jets, we've talked about this team all of last year. The problem with the Jets was not the defense. It was the offense. And if you go out and get Aaron Rodgers, that's supposed to solve that problem. The Jets defense last year held Buffalo in the 2 meetings to 17 and 20 points. I've always been a firm believer that if I can get the better defense getting points, I'm going to look that way. And that's what I'm getting tonight. The Jets last year had the second lowest yards per play allowed in the NFL. And when you think about how inept their offense was at times last year, meaning their defense was on the field for more snaps, that's pretty impressive. Aaron Rodgers is going to help balance that out this year. And I know this stat, Teddy's going to come back at me with it and said that's irrelevant because it was all with Green Bay. But if you want a stat on Aaron Rodgers, in his career as a home dog on Monday Night Football, it's only happened 8 times, 6-1-1 against the spread. I'm on the Jets. I like the Jets side tonight. I didn't get to the window with the clients on it as a full-blown play, but I can tell you I will have some teasers also with the Jets, teasing them up, getting them to 8 or 8.5 with the 2 or 2.5 point line that you have there, and find some games over from between Thursday and Sunday that would fit the criteria to get into that back half of the teaser.
Looking for some Wongs out there, Mr. Marco D'Angelo, talking about the Jets plus the points as home dogs against the Bills tonight. And this home thing, okay, home teams in the NFL yesterday, 5-10 straight up. Sorry, so this goes back to Thursday. It counts Kansas City losing at home. 5-10 straight up, 3-12 against the spread. Is this an anomaly? Is this something we can expect more of? I keep declining my home field edge every time I'm making my power rate numbers for the next week, and it feels like I'm not declining them enough. Home field, does it matter anymore, or not even a little?
It keeps shrinking, Teddy, the value of home field. There's no question about it. We know that the trend the last few years, road dogs have done very well in the NFL. One thing that I found over the years, Teddy, it just seems like when you have a good angle, like, obviously, back in the day, we always look for, home underdogs, especially divisional home underdogs. It seems like, and it's when there's only like one of them in that week, it seems like they win. But when you get a weekend that has like 5 of them, you got all these plays, that seems when the disaster seems to happen to me with the home dog. So, yes, you got to keep adjusting your home field advantage. Obviously, we had the problems with the teams in LA. They weren't getting the fan base there. Same way with the Raiders, their first few games, the field is split, basically, 60-40, sometimes close enough to 50-50 with road fans coming to these games. So, yeah, no more days of automatic threes for home field.
Marco D'Angelo joining us. Marco, just staying on this game. It doesn't concern you at all that no chemistry has been formed yet in New York, and Buffalo's pretty much rolling out the same team they rolled out last year?
If the chemistry that you had last year was good with the Jets, yeah, I would say that. But there was a big disconnect in New York last year between the offense and the defense, especially, because, of the quarterback, Zach Wilson, and some of the comments, that he made and never owned things up. So chemistry to me is, 0. Now, timing, you can say, yeah, there's going to be some, growing pains there. Well, that is, but don't forget, Aaron Rodgers brought some of his friends with him to New York. So he's got some people he's familiar to work with, throw to, and hand the football off to. So I think they'll be okay. Can they get blown out in this game? Anything can happen. But they will have a better showing than the Giants had last night. No question about that. They have more weapons. They have a better defense. Again, it's going to keep them in the game.
That's a given. Marco D, we got one more college football game to get into. It's $9 Mondays. What do you have to promote?
Well, I've got a baseball play, guys. The football weekend wasn't good. I was on 2 of those bad beats that Teddy talked about, and they both happened to be my top play of Saturday and Sunday, so that'll skew a weekend. But what was good was baseball. We went 7-1 in our last 8 in baseball since last Sunday. And I've got one play up tonight. It's a big 4% play. You can check that out at WagerTalk, and all of the cappers. $9 Monday. It's a great day to try different cappers and what they've got going.
Aaron Soman, one of our listeners, writes, New York Jets at home are 41% ATS since 2021. I think you could throw those numbers out the window. I think this is a completely different New York Jets team. I'm not suggesting they're going to cover ATS tonight, but I don't think those numbers are relevant anymore. Iowa State at Ohio. I'm struggling here. Plus 25. Yes. Way to go, Prez. Still reeling over the weekend. Plus 2.5. How do we bet this game?
Yeah, what I'm looking at in this one, guys, I do show every week, bet on it. And one of the featured games each week is my sandwich game of the week. Well, I can tell you right now, this is one of the games that will be in the running for that game when we do bet on it. These are the type of things I do on Monday morning when I start going through the schedule and find the spots. And here's what you've got with this game. First glance, you look at that number. It's a small number. So basically, when you're talking about a line under a field goal, it's basically just pick the winner. Now you look, you've got a Big 12 team playing a MAC conference team. That in itself is going to have the average bettor gravitating towards the Big 12 team, just by name association. But what I'm looking at in this game is this will be Iowa State's third game. Their first game of the season, home opener. Big favorite. They played Northern Iowa, little brother of the state. They won the game. but, they were 40-point favorite. They were supposed to, okay? They just, went through the motions and got the win. Last week, they had their annual rivalry, in-state rival. Iowa is there. They lose that game. Now, they're the little brother in that matchup. Iowa is the big brother of the state. So that is a letdown to lose to them. Most people automatically assume off of a big game loss that you're going to bounce back, you're angry and all of this. I'm looking at coming off of that game. Now you're traveling to play a MAC school who you played last year at home and just absolutely took them out behind the woodshed. They're going to look right past them this week because they open up their Big 12 schedule next week against Oklahoma State. This is what you call a sandwich game. Off of the Iowa game, the rivalry, and a much bigger game on deck for them. For Ohio U, this is a huge game to have a Big 12 team come to your stadium. That doesn't happen. Yes, they had a home and home, but usually they're taking the road game and getting the big payday. The small schools, the Power Fives don't go to the small conferences and play on the road. I think this is a big game for Ohio to upset Iowa State. Small number. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take them. And in that game last year, 4 turnovers did them in. I'll take Ohio U 24-20, mild upset. And like I said, this will be a candidate for the sandwich game of the week.
Are you worried at all about Curtis Rourke not being at 100%? He came back he got hurt opening day. The Ohio Bobcats quarterback missed the in-between game for them. Last week came back at FAU, and he wasn't right. He threw a couple of picks. The offense didn't really click. Are you worried he's not healthy against a pretty darn good, by MAC standards, Iowa State defense? It is hard with Iowa and Ohio and States right there.
Right.
I was ripping Prez. I was like, oh, my God. In my head, I was ripping him really bad. I'm like, yeah. But are we worried about Rourke versus a good defense?
Obviously, we'd have liked to have had him had a better game last week. There's no question about that. The situation where you say against, a decent Iowa State defense by MAC standards, is there any defensive standards in the MAC anyways? But also, you could say the same for the Big 12. They don't play defense there. But I will say one of the teams that do is the team you just mentioned. Iowa State does play defense. I'm playing a spot, Teddy. This is just one of those early season matchups that's got bigger fish to fry. And it's not like when you go the automatic bounce back that, Iowa State had national championship aspirations, that you're worried about them bouncing back. They're not. Their goal right now is to get to a bowl game, possibly win the Big 12, and that starts for them next week. And they're going to look past this game, in my opinion.
Marco D'Angelo, co-founder of WagerTalk.com, the damn best sports handicapping company on the planet. Marco, thanks for joining us. Teddy, let's get straight into it, man. You got a hard stop in exactly 10 minutes, so big game breakdown.
It's big game breakdown time here on Wager Talk Today. Let's talk about Alabama coming off a loss, a rare loss at home to Texas this past week. This coming week, Alabama minus 32, total 61.5 at South Florida. What are they doing playing at South Florida? It's a very weird game on their schedule. They don't play non-conference roadies against non-Power 5 schools. It was 1992, pre-Saban, the last time they played a roadie at a non-Power 5. Very weird matchup for Alabama. Now, this is what Alabama did as road chalk last year. They beat Texas by 1 as 21-point favorites. They lost straight up, -9 at Tennessee. They lost straight up, -14 at LSU, -11.5 at Ole Miss. They won by only 6. So that's 0-4 ATS as road chalk. Last 4 road openers, also 0-4 ATS. We do want to talk about what Alabama does off a loss. Off the 2 losses, they had 2 losses last year. -21 against Mississippi State, they won by 24. They also had Ole Miss didn't cover in that game. We talked about it. They won that game by only 6. The only regular season loss in 2021, they win the next week 49-9 on the road at Mississippi State. They won the title in 2020. The year doesn't count anyway. 2019, they lost to LSU, and for some reason they keep playing Mississippi State on the road after a loss. 38-7 the following week. They covered minus 18. Look, they've had Jalen Hurts, they've had Tua, they have Mac Jones, they have Bryce Young. Jalen Milroe's got some pretty big shoes to fill. He looked solid against Texas, but it was a defense that really got lit up in that game, and there were a lot of problems for Alabama. This is the type of game I think Bama goes in, finds a way to win, grinds it out defense. It's not about building margin. I don't trust USF to move the football against this defense, especially this defense off a bad showing. South Florida, they had one game against a Division I foe this year. They led 17-7 early against Western Kentucky and 41-24 final score. The offense didn't really work once things got going in that ball game. So I'm going to look under here. 61.5 seems a good notch or two high for an Alabama team who wants to grind out a win and go home, for a USF team that I don't think will be able to move the football. Under Alabama USF. There's your big game breakdown.
Back to you, El Presidente.
Go.
Teddy, J. Cool. J. Cool keeps writing in the chat room over and over again. I hope all you haters lost money going against Dion. That is such irony, J. Cool. It's beautiful irony, brother. I'm thinking you're hating on the people who bet against Dion. Let's have no hate. Today will be No Hate Monday. Drew Martin joining us, everybody. Drew, wonderful to see you. I apologize you have to deal with Teddy again at 1 o'clock, but nice to have you with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Prez. And hey, congrats to you, man. I see you're heating it up on the profit board there at WagerTalk. So shout out to you, man.
I heated it up. Dude, I heated it up. It literally like my house. I heated the house up so big for one straight year that I had to then turn it down to freeze a little bit. Oh my God, I had a horrific freaking weekend. But you know what, man? Lawrence Brown in the chat room writes, buy low, baby. So I expect a whole lot of clients on the Prez this coming weekend. Drew, we got to get straight into this game. Seattle, Detroit. Both teams went under. I released the over in both games. The Detroit game was wrong. The Seattle Rams game, I feel like, 3 missed field goals and a backdoor wide open to actually get there at the end. I don't feel like that was the wrong bet, but it ended up not going well. So I was on the over for both games. You like the under for this matchup in Detroit. Tell us why.
Sure, Prez. And yeah, I guess heated up was the wrong word, but over the course of the long term, I see you there. Yeah. But hey, Seahawks, Lions, guys, early kick here on Sunday. When I set the game over last night, the total was 51. Now we're seeing it at 49. So we are getting a little move towards the under. And I like it. You can see why here, as Detroit, the minus 5.5 point favorites at home. Look, we just saw the Lions hold the Kansas City Chiefs primetime game on Thursday to just 20 points. And keep in mind, they won by 1 point, 21-20, and the Lions were one of 6 teams in week 1 to score a non-offensive touchdown. So factor that in as well when you're going through your scores and how these games land. Still landed under. And they're going up against the Seahawks. And I know you just kind of teed it up there, Prez, but one thing I like to look at is pass attempts, and the Seahawks just 26 pass attempts week 1, only 16 completions. That's bottom 5 in the NFL. Therefore, what are they doing? They're keeping the ball on the ground. They're keeping that clock running. When you're betting totals in the NFL, college football, got to watch what teams are keeping that clock running and what teams aren't as much anyway. So both of these two teams to the under in week 1. I think we get more of the same here. Don't love the move under the 50 number, but it's still an elevated total compared to the other week 2 NFL totals here. So I think it's still too high, and I bet the Seahawks Lions to the under, Prez.
Drew, do you worry at all about Seattle's pass defense from yesterday? Because I was shocked by how bad that pass defense was. I mean, LA did whatever they wanted offensively. They ran the same crossing route over and over and over again, and Seattle made no adjustments to stop them. It was a bizarre defensive game plan for Seattle, and they got torched start to finish. Does that worry you here in a game you're looking under?
Sure, absolutely. Is there worries? Yeah, I mean, it's called gambling for a reason. I would think, from week 1 to week 2, NFL coaching staff with NFL players are able to at least improve somewhat. And you bring up a good point. If Jared Goff has time to throw behind a good offensive line, we've seen it going all the way back to his Cal days. I mean, this guy, he kind of gets hated on a little bit, but he is a accurate quarterback down the field. He can throw the deep ball. Kind of part of this bet is the Seahawks putting pressure on them. I think they'll be able to do it enough to keep this game under. But to answer your question, sure, it's a worry.
Drew Martin joining us, everyone. Exclusive handicapper at WagerTalk.com. Teddy, tomorrow, instead of the What Did Bettors Learn segment, let's go through overreactions. We'll talk about some of the NFL teams, how bad are the Giants, how good are Dallas, et cetera, et cetera.
Why would anyone wait till tomorrow and we can catch that on the opening line report in 15 minutes?
Whoa! Boom! Boom! We'll do them twice. Drew Martin, let's get to your next game. Atlanta Braves versus Philadelphia, minus 133. How do you bet this?
Sure, guys. And as you're watching the NFL opening line report, maybe have a TV on in the background muted and get this one going. Early start here, Braves and Phillies, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So you don't have a lot of time to get the bet in, just about, 20 minutes here. And I'm on the Braves, Prez. I mean, this is a train I just would not recommend stepping in front of. I mean, you look at top to bottom of their lineup, guys. I mean, what their 7-hitter is going to have like more than 30 home runs this year. This is one of the best lineups I can remember in recent history, and it's in the numbers. Team OPS, the Atlanta Braves have .847, an 847 team OPS. To put it in perspective with the other MLB teams, no other team has more than an 800 team OPS. So they're like, 5% more than any other team in terms of on base plus slugging percentage. It's pretty remarkable what they're able to do. They're slugging their way to wins. They're the best record in baseball right now. And they got Charlie Morton on the hill today. 3.32 ERA year to date. And none of his last 5 starts, he's let up more than 2 earned runs. I said another one. I sent this game over minus 133 last night in the overnights. And sure enough, people are kind of picking up what I'm kind of talking about here. Now the market at minus 155. I still like it after a 20-cent move, but Prez, give me the Braves here in the, I guess we could start it, start of the week here game, 1 o'clock Eastern, Braves and Phillies.
Drew, what do you got to promote?
Well, Prez, what MLB is doing very well right now on an 8-0, 3%? During the week anyway, those MLB games. So got one up here, $9 Monday and $9 Monday for Monday Night Football as well. NFL has been great going back a couple years now, Prez. So part of it, doing the NFL opening line report with Teddy, kind of student and teacher, and able to do it, I guess, give some of the profits to the clients. But wrote it all over there in the Slack, man. So got 2 plays up for $9 Monday.
There we go, Drew Martin, everybody. And I said to Teddy and Dan, no presidential address today, but we got 181 likes, and I feel like those people need to be rewarded. So I've got a couple of plays to give out. I went, with all that said about how bad I did this weekend, I went 4-0 with my Circa picks. For the record, all my clients got my Circa picks. I have 1 left to go, and it is on Buffalo tonight. I also like San Francisco in baseball, playing Cleveland under the total. And yes, I'm a homer. I think Chris Bassett's going to pitch his heart out tonight. I like the Blue Jays as well. Teddy's show in 15 minutes. I can't wait. One of the best shows on our entire network, Teddy. Good luck with it. Kick ass. We'll see you tomorrow. Take us home.
Well, thank you, Lawrence. That's going to wrap it for the Monday edition of Wager Talk Today. Like Lawrence said, stay tuned to this channel. 15 minutes from now, the opening line report, myself and Drew Martin, and a ton of quality programming throughout the day on Monday. Prez and I will be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific time, noon Eastern, for another edition of Wager Talk Today. Between now and then, enjoy the games and best of luck with all your wagers.